The following creepypasta that you are about to hear is not real. These are made-up creepypastas that I write myself. Thank you, and have a good day. Why did they hurt us? That was the text I saw on screen while playing LittleBigPlanet 3. More specifically, a very strange area of LittleBigPlanet 3. Well, I really don't know how else to describe it other than just an area of the game. Anyway, the text I saw earlier faded, and my sack person, still having the appearance of the younger sack person from earlier, was sitting on the ground in a solitary confinement room. I couldn't control my sack person, but what I could control was a loudspeaker in the corner of the room. Whenever I pressed the circle, X, triangle, or square buttons, a voice would be heard coming from the loudspeaker. I found out that each button had a certain sentence attached to it. I pressed X first, and heard the words, "You are worthless." When this happened, I saw my sack person's eyes slowly close. I pressed circle next, and heard, "You are a waste of oxygen." After this was said, my sack person had streams of tears down its cheeks. I pressed square, and heard, "You are a pathetic excuse for a human being." My sack person buried its head in its hands. But what was strange is how the voice said, "human being." I don't think sack people would really be considered as human beings in a realistic setting. But then I pressed triangle, and the voice said, "You are a burden to society, so don't expect anyone to care about you." My sack person was now crying, with its shoulders quickly jerking up and down, indicating that he was crying. I waited for a moment, and nothing happened. I decided to press the buttons more, not to make my sack person feel worse, but just to progress, since it looked like there was no other way to. But now, the circle, X, triangle, and square buttons were now all attached to one word. This word was, "Cry, child." I proceeded to press all of the buttons repeatedly, just to get this over with. But then I stopped for a second and noticed that my sack person was now beating its fists against the floor, to which he screamed. And then I saw my sack person's fists. They looked broken, and my sack person was now screaming in what seemed to be a mix of agony and sadness. And then text appeared on the screen while this was taking place, reading, "Welcome to SCV2. I've had enough. I quit LittleBigPlanet 3 and returned to the PS4 main menu. And I just sat there for a moment, trying to comprehend what I just saw and did. As I heard the calming sounds of the PlayStation 4 BIOS, I closed my eyes and tried to calm down. I rested my back on my couch and tried to forget about everything that's happened so far. I tried to remember the happier moments from my life, like my 10th birthday party, or my first day of kindergarten, or when I made my first friend. The day I learned how to ride a bike, or my first time on an airplane. I managed to find some comfort, but not for long. After a while, the image of the van from earlier kept on flashing in my mind. The van I saw next to the playground, the Surrey Research Facility van. I opened my eyes, and on the TV screen, I saw a message. I opened the message, and it was from a person who didn't even have a gamertag on PSN, nor was in my friends list. It read, "Keep playing LittleBigPlanet 3. I was in shock. I replied with, "Why?" I immediately got a response a few seconds after. "I want you to learn the truth." I replied again, "Truth about what?" I received another response, "TAP." I replied one more time, "What is TAP?" And then I received one last response. You'll find out soon enough. I tried to get more information out of who this person was, but they wouldn't respond. It was at this point that I knew that if I wanted to learn what was going on and why this was happening, I had to keep playing. I reluctantly reopened LittleBigPlanet 3 and continued from where I left off, since LBP 3 was suspended in the background. My sack person was back in the pod, with no music and no way to access the community moon or story levels. A text box then appeared on screen, and it read, "Want to learn about SCV3?" Underneath this text, there were two buttons, with the choices of yes or no. I had my sights set for no, but right at the last second, I jerked my thumb against the analog stick as the highlighted option went from no to yes. I quickly slammed my thumb on the X button and chose to witness this so-called SCV3. Why did I care so much? That was the question I was asking myself during the seconds after I selected the yes button. But my thoughts were quickly interrupted as a second text box came on the screen. Go to your moon and find a level called Restrictive Solitary. The text box then disappeared when I slowly navigated my way to my moon. I noticed that my moon was full. It was full of levels, all of which had the same name. PTSD. I eventually found the level titled Restrictive Solitary, and I opened up the level. But I wish I'd just turned off my PS4 right then and there, because what I saw wasn't a level. The entire level was actually a video. More specifically, security camera footage that was dated 26/7/2007. July 26th, 2007. Nothing happened during the first 10 seconds of the footage. It was just a still shot of a hallway with a large metal door in it. But after those 10 seconds, I heard something. Footsteps. They got gradually louder and louder over time. But that wasn't all I heard though. I heard the struggles of what sounded like a child. They were muffled, as if there was a handkerchief stuffed in the child's mouth. But not even 2 seconds later, two adult males rounded the corner carrying a small child with a handkerchief stuffed in the child's mouth. But the way they were carrying the child shocked me the most though. One of the men was walking forward while holding the child's legs behind him. The other man was standing behind the child, holding his hands, which appeared to have been tied behind his back. The child was squirming, and muffled crying can be heard. As they carried the child towards the middle door, the man holding the child's legs dropped them, leading the child to fall into a sitting position. The man who dropped the child's legs didn't react at all as he pulled out a key and began to open the metal door. While the first one was focusing on opening the door, the other one was trying to keep the child under control as he squirmed and cried even more. And then the man who held the child yelled at him in a British-sounding accent. "Shut your damn mouth, you worthless, petty little wretch. Now listen, you little plunker. If you continue on like this, you'll never see your parents again. Never again. Never again, lad." I was shocked after I heard this, and I gagged at the realization that this was being said to a child. And while it was being said, the child stopped squirming and just looked at the man while he shivered. He didn't make a single whimper after that. The man who was at the metal door opened it, and both men picked up the child and threw him into the room. And in the room was a metal bed and a loudspeaker in the corner of the room. Both men shut the door and walked off. and the screen faded to black. I was silent. I had my back pressed against my couch, and my controller resting in my hands. I was left alone with my thoughts. Was that clip even real? Or was it fake? If it was real, then who would be sick enough to do that to an innocent child? But if it was fake, who would be sick enough to create something like that? Is it a prank of some sort? But then I heard a voice come from my speakers. A British man, speaking with a faint static noise in the background. You're questioning the legitimacy of that video, aren't you? You're wondering if it's fake, or if it's just a joke. Well, let me tell you, it's real. And the reason why you're in disbelief is because no one ever found this footage except for me. And soon, I'm going to use this footage against the people who ran that damn experiment. People praised the hell out of them, you know. Gave them awards for apparently making a breakthrough for developing cures of disorders like OCD, ADD, autism, and more. And to be fair, they did treat those people. At least they did for the people that signed up. Because that footage is what they don't tell you. It's the darkness behind what the media called a breakthrough in treating disorders like OCD, ADD, autism, Tourette's, anxiety disorders, and more. But for the others who didn't sign up, like myself and my family, they wanted to cure us of our humanity, our personality, everything that makes us who we are. They wanted to change our personalities. They wanted to turn us into violent or sad and angry monsters. They didn't want to make us happy or happier, just monsters. And at the end of it all, some of us recovered to an extent, while some had to save themselves from what they had become. And we had to stay silent about it, or else they would come back and obliterate our chances of ever fully regaining our humanity. Human experimentation is what causes pain and misery, and as the years go by, scientists are only encouraging the spread of that pain and misery. We only have one life on this earth, one chance to live life to the fullest, and the victims of that horrifying experiment have to live with the trauma. They have to live with the PTSD they inherited as a result of the psychological torture they endured. And many of the victims still remain in a catatonic state. Like I've said, TAP kills. The Adaptation Project kills.